Now I am recording. Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, please, what kind of resistance have you encountered?
So, Colin, yes, you said the people from the bar, there's no organized bar in Colombia, but the people from the legal profession are very skeptic. So, and I guess it's also a matter of age. So, older lawyers they would say they will always think of the profession, right? Like, what are you doing with the profession, and why are you affecting us? And so, like, no, I'm trying to help the way things are. So that's, but to be honest, I will be the minority. Like, only very few people have said that to me bluntly. Like, but a few have, like, after a presentation, I've done it, as you may imagine, many times.
Sure.
But yeah, very few people have come after the presentation and say that, because the presentation is super positive.
Right.
But then, apart from that, there was always the budget restriction. And I don't know if budget is sometimes used as we want to do it, but we won't do it, or it's just an excuse. Because I think, for instance, for the implementation of ODR in secure transactions, which is a legal mandate. So it should be done because the law indicates.
Right.
They're all saying, oh, no, give us 1 more year. Because, and then this has been set since 2017. 1 year.
Right.
So budget can be a limitation. In the case of consumer, there is this. People say that consumers should be left alone and consumers should have as most rights as possible. So some people perceive that, legally speaking, having ODR for consumers will be in favor of the companies, of the providers, and not the consumers. So that's one of the other reluctance that I get, even though I think this is, and the way it's proposed by the UN, by Antitro, is for consumer transactions, but in consumer, what they've done is online mediation.
Well, and one of the reasons why we didn't get an agreement in UNCITRAL was because there was disagreement about whether or not arbitration should be applied to consumer cases. And I do understand that. I think there is real potential for abuse if it wasn't well regulated. But I think we have to be realistic that most consumers don't have access to redress at all. So if we could provide them an expedited online arbitration process, many of the consumers would choose it. But I think that hesitation exists around the world. Yeah. And I do think lawyers are worried about losing their jobs, and I understand that. But as you say, the courts work the same way pretty much they did in Roman times. And what we need to do, if we upgrade the field and we digitize it, if you look at medicine and finance, we brought technology in, but we didn't get rid of the doctors and we didn't get rid of the stockbrokers. They're still there. It's just now they're running the computers. So that's what's going to happen with the law, is that the lawyers are going to run the computers and the computers are going to resolve the cases. So we'll get there. I mean, the reluctance for people to make these changes, saying, oh, well, we don't have the money. I mean, I always say, look, if you don't have the money, that's why you need technology. That's a reason why we need to make the change faster. So I think we're going to get there, again, drip by drip. But I love your quote at the end, the repurposing of Isaiah. I think that's great. It's all going to happen. It's just a question of how quickly. So
exactly, it's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, and I still have more questions, but I wanted to see, does anybody else have questions that they would like to ask? Feel free to unmute your mic and speak up. I'm going to ask one more just because it seems like people are taking a second. It's interesting that the design on the arbitrator is, they're intended to get an award within 2 months. But if they don't resolve the case within 3 months, then the case gets reassigned. I think that's very interesting. It really does light a fire under the arbitrator. And can you tell me a little bit more about, I mean, I understand we want efficiency, so we don't want the arbitrators sitting on these things for 6, 8, 10 months. But that's interesting. I haven't heard designs that do that before. So tell me your thoughts.
It was actually not our design. The inspiration for this came from the Colombian procedural code. So, of course, the Colombian system, the Colombian judiciary has tried to resolve the long times in decision-making processes in Colombia. So there is one provision in the Code of Civil Procedure that states that if a judge takes more than 1 year to decide on a case or to issue a sentencia, a final decision, then it goes reassigned to the judge next in number, because you have judge 1, 2, 3, 4. So then if you're judge 2, then it goes to judge 3.
I see.
But then it's not applied.
Oh, okay.
But the provision was really good. So what I thought when we were designing the system was, well, why don't we use that but make it automatic? And then people will know, because if you know that it's automatic, then unless parties agree on the system, then it goes to another arbitrator, and you don't get any fees.
Totally, yeah.
So yeah, there's an incentive to solve, and there's also an incentive to have like really short decisions, like no more than 2 pages, and that's the way it's designed. So if you want to decide that, so decisions in Colombia can be like 100 pages that nobody reads, right? So, and then we're not creating doctrine, right? You're not making philosophy. You have to decide on a case. So 2 pages, and it's a form that you will fill out online. Yeah. And then you will not get as much money, but you need to write 100 pages for a single case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the same philosophy. Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense to use the software to kind of keep the process moving. I mean, that's really what the parties want anyway. So I think that's great. All right. Do we have any questions? It looks like Suman, you've come unmuted. Do you have a question for Nicolás? Anybody else? Feel free to unmute and ask a question. Well, we may just have a bunch of shy people. I've got one other question for you, Nicolás. You talked about, it seems like in Colombia, the notion of a face-to-face judicial process is pretty well enshrined in the law. I'm not sure if it's in the Constitution, this notion of showing up in person. Yeah, I mean, how hard is it going to be to change the law to allow for these all online processes? I mean, is that going to be a really difficult legislative fight? Is that a multi-year process, or is that something that you think you can get changed more quickly than that?
The thing is that Colombia was used to the written procedure for until 2012.
2012.
And we only changed to an oral system for commercial and civil procedures, like private disputes under the Colombian legislation. Then they were all written, so it's according to the Colombian constitution to have all written procedures. But the notion of oral as being expedite and efficient was introduced in 2012 with the most recent code of civil procedure. And then in that legislation, there's a principle of in-mediation, or I don't know if it translates well, like in mediación, which is face-to-face interaction. But I don't believe that has the rank of a constitutional principle. To me, it doesn't. And the Ministry of Justice actually adopted the ODR model rules. So at least the Ministry of Justice considers it to be according to the Colombian system. So we have this stamp of approval, and this has not been challenged before any court as being unconstitutional.
I see.
So I hope that will not be the case. But of course, if somebody loses in ODR, I'm sure we'll have to tell us, and that will happen. It's inevitable.
Yeah, and if there's a bar association president or something that doesn't like ODR, I'm sure they're going to think it's unconstitutional. So it may get challenged.
Someone's going to challenge it, but that you have to put it. I really appreciate the fact that the Ministry of Justice, and they started it for a year, decided to adopt it, even though they knew it was going to be hard with lawyers and with we have a lot of authors specialized in procedural law.
Sure.
And yeah, they will have to get used to it, because it's now it's part of I mean, it's not considered against the procedural standards, at least not according to the Ministry of Justice.
Sure.
And since it's online arbitration, there's by constitution a higher flexibility in terms of procedure. So for mediation and like for ADR, according to the Constitution, there is a higher flexibility for the due process standards. So you can always go for that. So if it's mediation, if it's arbitration, then it's not as hard as if it was a regular court case.
Yeah, I mean, the support of the Ministry of Justice is absolute gold for this because you know they can break through a lot of these challenges too, because they kind of set the rules. So all right, well that's great. All the participants here, do you have any questions for Nicolás before we let him go and let him take the rest of his day? Yes, Suman, I see you put your hand up. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're asking a question. Okay, great. And Heather posted great information. Let's see. So anybody else, you can unmute yourself and speak up. Suman, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. But if you want to type your question into chat, that's another possibility. All right, well, we'll give it one more minute. But I'll say, Nicolás, I think that your deck is great. I kind of want to send you on a tour all around the world so that you can show this deck, because I think some of the things I laughed out loud, like at the Simpsons slide and the blind hamster, is really, really good, and it makes the case in a very compelling way. So thank you so much. I can't think of a better kickoff for Cyberweek, and I think.
Thank you so much, William. Well, you're honoring me by allowing me to be here.
No,
before Ethan catch. I'm talking before Ethan catch. It's like incredible.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, Ethan got the flu over the weekend. I don't know. Is Ethan here in our room? No, I think he's probably sleeping it off because he was going to do the plenary, the next session, but we moved him to Friday.
Okay. I didn't know that. So okay.
So Suman's question did come through. So here it is. He asked, my question to you is, do you think we can make ODR mandatory for some kind of disputes? So that's a good question. I know you talked about consumer disputes and sort of the controversy. People are okay with mediation, but not with arbitration. So what do you think? I mean, do you think we're going to get to the point where we can make ODR mandatory?
Yes, I believe that will be the case. I can tell you because of experience in Latin America, at least from a civil law perspective, I won't be so confident as to answer it from the US or the UK, but we have several kinds of disputes. For instance, in Bolivia, every single insurance dispute goes to regular arbitration. So if it goes to regular arbitration, I don't see why it will not be possible to take it to online arbitration or ODR. For in the case of Peru, all disputes with the state, so they're called public or administrative disputes. So if you have a dispute, say, against the municipality of Lima, then that dispute is by law. It's mandatory online arbitration.
Interesting.
And actually, I don't know if Jose is still here, but Jose, for the Colombian guy that has been working on it, he claims that should be the case in Colombia too. Those are at least two examples in Latin America that have made it mandatory. But in order to do that, you need to have a law mandating it.
Right.
So Colombia has no mandatory arbitration, but if it assumes mandatory arbitration, say for secure transactions, which was proposed but was not accepted back in 2012, but if it was accepted mandatory arbitration for secure transactions, that could be perfectly be done online, like ODR.
Totally.
I don't see there's any actual difference between online arbitration and regular arbitration.
Yeah.
It's just you're using a computer, but the rest to me is exactly the same. You're trying to follow some steps and to be fair and to have someone to decide on a case. So
absolutely.
So we have examples which are considered to be constitutional with no restrictions in Latin America that have made ADR mandatory.
Well, and I think about also the Civil Resolution Tribunal in British Columbia. They're actually closing the small claims courts and they're making it the sole path to redress. So, I think this whole notion of online courts that utilize ODR technology, eventually, once people get confidence in them, they're going to shut down the face-to-face options and then they de facto become mandatory. So, I think it is very interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Is Darren speaking, or by chance? I have
Oh
to check.
no! Sadly, no. We should have gotten Darren to speak. Maybe I
Okay.
can. Maybe I can try and finagle a presentation from
Okay.
him in
He
by
knows
the
so
end.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
Darren's great, and Shannon Salter is amazing at the Civil Resolution Tribunal too. She's an incredible advocate. Again, I want to send the two of you on a tour around the world to go convince all the other countries. But all right, and with that, I think we've done it. Nicolás, thank you so much for this. This was really great. I've recorded the Q&A. Maybe you can share your slides, and then we'll post them. But this has been wonderful.
Yeah, I will send it to you, Colin.
Okay, great. And Suman said, thank you for a wonderful presentation. So excellent kickoff. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We're going to have the plenary. The opening plenary is going to be in about an hour at this same link. So if you can join us again, that would be great. But for now, why don't I end the session? So Nicolás, thank you so much. And
thank you.
I look forward to participating with everybody else over the rest of Cyberweek. So, okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.